I'd also like to thank Sister Yolanda Kafka, the president of UISG, for joining us today to offer closing remarks. Thank you, Sister. Before I turn this over to Ambassador Axworthy, I want to take a moment to recognize and honor the tremendous sacrifices made by women religious during this pandemic. Here in Italy and around the world, many faithful sisters have made the ultimate sacrifice while caring for others. As we continue our work together, let us preserve and honor their memory. Thank you. Ambassador Axworthy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ambassador Gingrich. So, Ambassador Gingrich, you might have to turn that off. Ambassador Gingrich, Sister Yolanda, Sister Pat, dear friends joining us online. Thank you, Ambassador Gingrich, for inviting me to co-host this symposium today, and to the UISG for allowing us once again to take advantage of your hospitality. I'm delighted to be able to join Ambassador Gingrich in recognizing the work of the sisters worldwide. One of the discoveries I made when becoming ambassador to the Holy See nearly 4 years ago is how much great work is done by the religious orders around the world, whether running schools and hospitals, caring for the sick, rescuing victims of human trafficking, or supplying employment for the destitute. The religious orders provide essential services, either in places where there is little other provision, or for people for whom there is little other support. They do that without blowing their own trumpet, and often at great cost to themselves. We have with us today 3 sisters who represent the best of that tradition. Our governments try to address many of the same issues that the sisters do. The UK, for example, meets the spending target of 0.7% of gross national income on aid, which in 2019 amounted to 16.8 billion euros. That spending goes on humanitarian aid, vaccinations, education, providing food and medical care, often working with the UN or with national governments. I hope our efforts are complementary. The sisters' operations are endlessly agile, spotting needs and responding to them. They are resilient, staying in conflict zones, for example, even when that is at risk to themselves. We welcome their leadership. We recognize that they're uniquely well placed to build relationships of trust with those who have been exploited or abused. We cannot always do the same things in the same way, but we can work together to end human trafficking, to fight sexual abuse and violence against women, and to promote education for girls, to reduce poverty, and to provide healthcare in the world's poorest places. These are goals that we have in common. The 650,000 religious sisters are an army for the greater good. We are here to celebrate their service and to hear some of their inspiring stories. So now I'm going to turn to our 3 panelists who are going to illustrate 3 aspects of the sisters' work. First of all, we have Sister Stan, Therese Mario Mumuni, who is a native of Ghana, and for the first 15 years of her work with the sisters was in Nigeria. But then she returned to northern Ghana, as Ambassador Gingrich said, to work with children born with birth defects, where she runs an orphanage. Sister Stan, the floor is yours.
Your Excellency, thank you very much for giving me this great opportunity to share our work with you. My name is Reverend Sister Stan Therese Mario Mumuni. I am the foundress of the Mariam Sisters of the Eucharistic Love and the Nazareth Home for God's Children. The Nazareth Home for God's Children are children who are born with birth defects. and usually are killed by their community, parents, just because of their birth defect. This is a traditional religion that people have accommodated for so many years ago, that this practice has been going on. When I realized that this was what was happening, I told myself, why should such an innocent children die just because they are born with birth defects? I asked if there could be something done about it. But everybody said there was no money and there was no way to carry on this action. I told myself I will never turn away from the needs that is in front of me. I decided that these children must be given life. They must be given dignity. They must be given respect. Just because I am born blind, I have to be killed. Just because I am born dumb and dumb, I have to be killed. Just because I am born with missing fingers, I have to be killed. Even twins are forbidden by these people. But who are you to kill a human being like that? But we live in a place where there is no security, no enforcement of law, and therefore things have taken place for a very long time. Innocent souls have been perished. Christ told me, even though you have nothing, I am asking you to go and rescue my children. Go and rescue this innocent one. Go and save the life of these vulnerable children. Their cry has reached my ears. I cannot stand it again. So we came here to demonstrate my love for God by demonstrating our love for these innocent souls. These children are now children that when you see them, you know that they are children chosen from God. They are created in the image and likeness of God. They are wonderful children. They are born with deformity, but yet God created them in his own image and likeness. Children are gifts from God. Why should somebody condemn an innocent child? Why should such an innocent child die? Why should such a child suffer all this tribulation? Some have been given poisonous drink to die, but God has said no. Some, unfortunately, have met their untimely death. Our mission here on earth, we are the hands of Christ today. We are the legs of Christ today. We are the feet of Christ today. In my nothingness, I said, no, I have to rescue these children. People start something because of what they have. I've started from nothing, coming from a very poor background. Even in Ghana, you can see the difference between the northern part of Ghana and then the southern part of Ghana. If you visit Ghana, you would think there are two different countries altogether. There is absolutely a great poverty. And we live among Muslims. But we must reveal the love of Christ. We must let Christ reveal in our life. The Muslims have come to realize the work we do and appreciate it. And this has brought a great unity between the Muslims and the Christians in this sun. The pandemic has caused us a lot, In the front battle, we did not know anything about this pandemic. Suddenly hearing from the news that please don't go out, come and pick your child from the school of the blind. Another call coming in, come and pick your children from the school of the dumb and deaf. Another call coming in, come and pick your children from the school. This was a great shock. We had to run. We didn't even know where to begin. To be able to gather our children from all the special schools that we placed them and brought them to the house. To begin to protect these children, to educate them, there was nothing to educate them. They say sanitizers. We ran to the market. The price has shoot up more than 3 times of what we used to buy. They sell liquid soap. We ran to the place, the price has gone too high. We have to get food, to store food, to be able to feed these children. We have special children who can neither eat except milk, except only milk that they can take. They cannot sit except lying down. These children have spinal problems that we have to attend to. Getting milk to feed them every day was very, very hard. Movement became difficult. Nobody came in and nobody went out. We had to ask staff to stay at home in order to prevent them bringing the disease into the house. At this period too, we were being called by so many priests, please rescue a child that is in danger. Please, sister, come. We have rescued 2 children that they want to kill them. Please come. A woman gave birth and died, and that child is considered witch and wizard, and we need to do something about it. All this, we have to risk our life to go in for such innocent victims. This is the challenge, but God wants us to do it because we are the people that God has chosen in a special way. I was hungry, you gave me to eat. Naked, you clothed me. Homeless, you gave me a place to live in. Thirsty, you gave me water to drink. Who is he? Why should such victim go on? Christ said, let the children come to me, for theirs belong the kingdom of God. Children are precious to God. Even in this difficult moment of the whole world, children suffer mostly the disaster than anybody at all. So why should such victim have to die? Why should such victim have to go through trouble? The ends of the knees are so much. Many people are dying of hunger. We live in a poverty zone and no one knows, no one gives nothing. With the pandemic, we had to struggle with the little we have to be able to even reach out to others to support them. Our mission here on earth is to keep rescuing life, rescuing souls, and keep spreading the good news of the kingdom of God. And that is why we, the Mariam Sisters of Eucharistic Love, have taken this challenge to embark on this mission of rescuing children who are condemned to die just because they are born blind or they are born with any birth defect. There is also human trafficking, even just in Ghana here. It's not internationally. People sell their children for what is equivalent to a $5, so that these children can go to a fishing boat and fish for other people to sell. They sell their children for a minimum of $10, $15, what you can think of. And these children have no future. They have no education. They cannot go anywhere. They risk their life in the sea, day in and day out, to bring out fish for other people to go and sell and enjoy it. This is also our mission, to rescue such trafficking of children, such injustice of children, such unusual way of doing things. God does not want us to do like that. God is love, and he who lives in God lives in love. God said, go out into the whole world, become disciples of all nations. That means go out into the world and preach the good news of the kingdom of God. We are grateful that we have a share to suffer for Christ. We started from nothing, but God's grace has been with us. We are not going to turn away from the needs of the society, right? We will do our best. And even in the Muslim territory, we have demonstrated our love for God, our love for our Muslims, brothers and sisters, and now we have lived in harmony. We live together in joy. We live together in happiness, that they can come to our house and even sit to watch us partake in the celebration of the Eucharist. And they can visit us when we are in the hospital and wherever we are. And that is our mission here on earth. That is what God has called us to do. It is a hard time. It is a difficult moment, but this is what we are called to do. Love one another, just as I have loved you. The love of Christ must continue to spread. If you are a reverend sister, knowing that I have no breast milk to feed children, but I had 6 babies at the same time. 6 babies, ranges between 3 weeks, 1 week, 2 weeks, and 1 day born. How can it happen? But God was able to help, that we were able to take care of these 6 babies at the same time. And we took care of them. And now they have survived, and they are now big children, and we give glory to God for all this great work. So my mission here on earth is to spread the good news of God by the works we do. By the works we do, so that they will know that we are the disciples of God. They will know that we are called by God, because we Christians are the light of the world. You are the light of the world, and sometimes we have, because of certain situation of where to stay, even movements is a problem here. Water situation is a problem here. At this pandemic, there was no water here to drink. And we have to risk our life to go out and find water for people to drink. So we are the light of Christ. We are the way, we are the truth, and we are the people who carry the message to Christ. Thank you very much for giving me such a great opportunity to share our life or my life with you. May the good Lord bless you for the work you also do and for great love. Thank you.
Imelda Poo, who, as Ambassador Gingrich said, is a native of the UK and started her life as a sister working in deprived areas of the UK, but then she moved to Albania, where she works with trafficked women. And she is also president of the Religious in Europe Network Against Trafficking and Exploitation, Renata, so part of the worldwide network of sisters who combat trafficking, Talitha Kum. And we were delighted when Sister Imelda was awarded an MBE in recognition of her efforts. So Sister Imelda, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Ambassadors, for this amazingly big privilege and honour to speak today at this symposium. I'm speaking actually on behalf of Renata and Mary Ward Loreto, and Renata is an NGO of religious and sisters working across Europe against trafficking and exploitation. It works very much in collaboration with Talitha Kum, the international network of sisters working against human trafficking, and also in very close collaboration and unity with the church and state and civil society to combat this heinous crime in our world today. I think it's important we just name the fact that there are 40 million trafficked victims in our world today, and they're in front of our noses, along our streets and in our neighborhoods. And it is a $40 billion industry of this heinous crime of the trade in human beings. Renata and really all NGOs working against human trafficking have the main focus today in working tirelessly to protect victims of trafficking as a priority. And in that sense, they're working to rid the world of all forms of labor, slave labor, and sexual exploitation, of organ harvesting. In fact, all forms of exploitation that are around in the mafias and the criminal gangs in our world today, whether it be on net or in reality in our streets. The other foci of our network throughout Europe is to address the social systemic injustice that is actually causing law to be muddied and not able to implement justice on the side of the traffic victims. And so across borders and within countries, Renata is developing and using its network to strongly collaborate together and develop communication and address the needs that are around us for the victims of trafficking and all the organizations that we need to work together to collaborate with to combat this crime. Also, another key address that we need to do is advocacy and education. Advocacy to change law, which is weak across Europe and across the world, is not trauma-informed, is not victim-centered. It isn't human rights-based, as in the UN is calling for. And we need to speak out together and to educate our youth in particular to come together to speak against this horrendous crime in our society today. So we need to challenge the judicial authorities and the civil authorities to enforce legislation to protect victims. I'd like to tell you a story to indicate the kind of advocacy and the kind of immediate direct action and protection that Renata members, that Mary Ward Loreto members of my congregation's foundation in Albania address daily. And the story of a wonderful young Nigerian girl, very successful at university in Lagos. And she was approached by her uncle, who asked her to come with him to Europe, where he would be able to offer her a wonderful place at a European university where she would have so much more credibility, he promised her, with a degree from such a university. And he would pay for everything. He would pay for the transport and accommodation and the fees. She took a couple of days to think about this, but he persuaded her and she went with him. He said she couldn't go home to her village miles away, but she'd need to come now because the opportunity was this week. So she went with her uncle in trust. And when she arrived in Europe, very sadly, she was immediately sold off to a gang of traffickers in Europe, in West Europe. And there she was locked in a room adjacent to another girl who was locked in her room from Latvia. And they had to support the trafficking gangs by multiply being sexually exploited day after day, night after night. She was prostituted out and used for sex by up to 20 men a day. It was a most horrendous experience. Her food was left outside the door. She was totally broken, disassociated, became another woman to survive the ordeal. And then suddenly, after 3 months, she was taken to another country with this Latvian girl and sold off again. And in this second country, after about 3 days of this multiple abuse and rape, the Latvian girl flipped, if you like. She became totally manic and screamed and was out of control in her pain. And at that point, the police were brought in, and she and the Nigerian girl were rescued. Of course, the Latvian girl had to be admitted to a mental institution for her total breakdown, whilst the Nigerian girl was taken to a shelter run by sisters. And the lovely story is that today, this Nigerian girl is now studying at a university in Ireland and is most definitely a survivor of trafficking and doing such wonderful work to spread the story and the need for advocacy around what is happening clandestinely in the darknet online against these innocent young people. So we look at COVID-19 and we say, what is the difference between these stories and what the work of Renata and Mary Ward-Loreto is in Albania and across Europe to what has happened since March the 10th, when most of us went into lockdown? I can say that there have been 3 distinctive shifts. One is that the online work of Renata, which was probably 40% of its work anyway, working across borders in rescue, reintegration, advocacy and awareness raising, has now gone into 70–80% online. Even the work in direct action that we're doing in Albania and across borders is counselling online victims who are rescued across borders and language difficulties. And so the online counselling is vital to bring young people out of trauma after they become victims of trafficking. The online work is also now upped in the sense of it's being used in a massive way for advocacy and awareness raising. So we were invited by the European Council to make a film on the impacts and the challenges we would recommend to the European Council to combat human trafficking during this time of COVID-19. And 2 of us were involved in this filmmaking and were presented with many others at the European Council to raise awareness and highlight the issues that are arising in our world today. The second major thing is that there's a massive explosion of poverty, and not just poverty, but starvation and hunger. And so here in Albania, Mary Ward-Loreto is actually feeding many families, absolutely protecting themselves and others through social distancing. But amazingly, because of COVID-19, donors are offering their money for emergency feeding and for the essential hygiene needs that are required by these vulnerable people. And consequently, we're working with the municipalities, with organizations such as Caritas in each of the countries to work together to feed the starving and to respond to the most vulnerable who will be trafficked if they're not protected and kept safe during this era, because these are the people, the vulnerable people, that the traffickers go to immediately during any kind of crisis. And thirdly, there is the explosion of children going online. And we know through Polaris, through OSCE, and all those who are researching the situation in the dark net and in the internet today, that children are becoming incredibly more vulnerable to sexual exploitation online. So all of us need to wake up to this phenomena that's happening. Together, we need to break the chain of the traffickers, the illicit supply chains in the corporates, because it's labor trafficking that's happening in and out through illegal labor exploitation of young and vulnerable people. So it's the illicit supply chains in the corporates, and all of these together are building the chains which enslave the victims. So we call on the governments to ensure that the law is implemented at this time, and that the law custodians actually keep their eyes and ears open more today against human trafficking than ever before. There is a terrible distraction for law enforcement and for the judiciary to be distracted into the very, very many other opportunities for them to work to protect law, but they mustn't forget the human trafficking. Also, there is a need to follow the money, to absolutely be aware of that need to see where the traffickers now are moving online. They're forcing some trafficked to open bank accounts, they're money laundering. They are absolutely hiding their illicit dealings on the dark internet, where the money is passing hands for this dastardly crime. I could say so much more, but there is not time, and it's important we give the focus to our third speaker. So I want to thank you all for listening, and hopefully we'll have time in questions to offer more stories. Thank you.
Sister Alicia Varkas, who's joining us from Jerusalem, where she is the regional leader of the Comboni Sisters in the Middle East. And they run a spiritual retreat, a kindergarten, and they serve the Bedouin population of the desert of Judah. But she's also a sister from northern Italy, whose own community has been tragically very deeply affected by coronavirus. So I hope she's going to talk to us about both those things. Sister Alicia, over to you.
Good morning, and thank you very much for this great opportunity of participating in this event. Yes, when the lockdown happened for all of us, I was in Jerusalem, and the news arrived very quickly of the situation in northern Italy. Well, our congregation, our order is an Italian order, and we have nearly 400 elder sisters who have been missionaries all over the world in Italy. So unfortunately, one of our communities in Bergamo got infected at the very beginning of coronavirus emergency, and we started receiving bad news from the community. In a few days, several sisters passed away, and several young sisters, most of us nurses, we volunteered to go and reach them and help them with any kind of work needed. So it has been a very powerful, a very intense experience, living this coronavirus crisis from inside, from Bergamo, and sharing somehow the tragedy that many other sisters are living right now. I think of sisters in New York, in London, in Brazil, in Ecuador, and in many other places all over the world. And during these pandemics, we have lost 10 sisters in Bergamo, and when I arrived there, most of the community were sick. I will say like 45 sisters out of 55 or 60. And then there was a chaotic situation because not only the superior of the community, the administrator, the nurses, but also the staff members of the house, the staff of the kitchen, the laundry, the cleaning, everybody was sick. So the house was in a real chaos. And I think it has been a great support what we have received from other congregations. No? Our main concern was that we didn't have any protection, and it was from other congregations, first of all from St. Joseph Sisters in Jerusalem, and then from sisters as far as Hong Kong. They have been sending us material and protection to work with COVID patients. And I think this is a wonderful experience of sharing. Even the cloister sisters, the Clarice sisters of Bergamo, have been supporting the community in many different ways. At a very personal level, I think it has been a very powerful experience to live from inside the suffering of the people in Bergamo. And it has been very meaningful to go through the Lent season and the Holy Week in this process of really cross, passion, and resurrection. It has been a very important faith process, I think, for myself and for all of us. As a communist sister, I think it has been only a privilege. No? We have this slogan, no? This sense of sharing with people's lives, with people's sufferings as part of our DNA. And I think that being part from inside of this tragedy that humanity is facing right now is only a gift from God for the whole congregation, and a very special way to be able to bend over our elderlies and to convey to them our affection, our care, and our gratitude for their service in all their lives. No? We had to face like very important challenges. No? First of all, as I told you, we are serving elder sisters, but they are not considered house for elderlies or homes for elderlies, like institutions. They are just convents. So we didn't have any kind of structure. We didn't have tests. We didn't have access to specific treatments. We didn't have equipment. And this is transversal, no, all over the congregation. We have been lacking these materials. No? On the other hand, when I look outside at the sisters working in another countries, I have been in contact with many sisters working in places like Jordan, the Italian hospital in Kerak, in Wau, and Anzara, in South Sudan, in Chad, in Ecuador. And I can see the sisters exposed to many risks with no equipment at all. They don't work in many cases in governmental hospitals. They don't have access to tests. So they are receiving suspected patients and cases without any possibility of protecting themselves, protecting the staff, protecting the other patients around them. They don't have access to specific treatments. And in many cases, the local doctors or the volunteers coming from abroad are leaving the country or are leaving the hospitals to work for other organizations who are paying to work with COVID. So the situation is really getting very worrying for many of our sisters. No? One of them from Chad just told me yesterday, I remain alone in the hospital and we have more than 100 beds and I am the only doctor here. For many other sisters who are not working in medical issues, they have to face this explosion, as all of you mentioned already, of poverty and social crisis. And many sisters from Sri Lanka to the Bedouins in Israel, to those working with refugees and asylum seekers or migrant workers, even in the Gulf, are dealing with starvation of the families. No? When I look at my sisters, religious women in the front line, I don't see super women. I see women of great faith, of great compassion and generosity, of great determination, but also very vulnerable women, sometimes exhausted, most of the time powerless because they are burdened with the brokenness of their people. But what I love most about them is that they are resilient mothers. They really believe that life is stronger than death, and they live and testimony God of life for all his children. Thank you very much.
Happened to your community in northern Italy, because I think it brings home very much how some of the communities of religious sisters have really suffered in this pandemic, as well as being focused on helping others. Now we have a little bit of time, not very much, about 10 minutes, for questions and comments. So I think people are joining us by two means. If you're on Zoom and you would like to say something, could you use the raise your hand function, please? And if you're on Facebook, unfortunately, I don't think you can comment, so I'm afraid you'll just have to listen. And please keep your comments and questions very short so we can hear from a few people. Obviously, we would like to hear from sisters in other countries of their experiences. But I think, first of all, we're very honoured to have Dr. Francesca Di Giovanni, who is Under-Secretary for Relations with States, Secretary of State of the Holy See. So, Dr. Di Giovanni, over to you.
Thank you, Ambassador Calista Gingrich and Sally Axworthy, for organizing this event and for giving me the floor. This encounter is a great opportunity to recount the stories of so many women religious as we have witnessed before. Who live their vocation in situations that are particularly challenging. This includes not only poverty, destitution and war, but also the dark side of a consumer-based system which promotes models and lifestyles that popularize images of false well-being. I would like to seize this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation to the two sisters
And hope that she rejoins us in a minute. I think our next speaker is Sister Christine Anderson. Do we have Sister Christine online?
Good morning to you all. Good morning. I just want to make a couple of points. Fantastic sharing from the three sisters, and thank you. And thank you to the ambassadors for setting this up. I'd just like to remark that in all cases, every time some of these sisters at the front line talk, there are always other elements involved. There's always the element of solidarity with each other in the communities, and the solidarity of faith, of course, but there's also the solidarity of teams and of lay people who are working with us all the time. And that is the most important thing for us, that we actually can hear the sense of the sisters who are in partnership with laity as they do this work. Many of the laity also in the front line, and congratulations also to them who support us so much.
Do we have anyone else who would like to make a comment? Any of our sisters joining us from overseas? Ah.
I think I've been unmuted. This is Dr. Rose Lamello. Thank you so much to the ambassadors for organizing such a great event, and to all of the sisters for giving such interesting insights into what they're doing and the struggles they're facing. I kind of have a question for anyone on the panel, which is that as a historian, we often find that the history and work of religious sisters can often get overlooked by scholars or be misunderstood by scholars. So I was wondering how best historical of religious sisters, historically speaking, in order to support the sisters' work now across the world. And I'm sorry that I don't have video. My camera is not working at the moment.
Was the question how best we can support the sisters? Okay, I think we'll just collect one or two other comments. I think Anne Kelleher wanted to say something.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Can.
Great, thank you, Ambassador Axworthy. Thank you both Ambassador Gingrich and Ambassador Axworthy for the symposium, and congratulations to everybody who has contributed. I work as a lay person, as the communications person for Renate Europe, and I want to, of course, congratulate Imelda in the context of her dynamic work and her leadership. But I want to follow up in relation to Christine Anderson's contribution with regards to the solidarity of faith and solidarity of teams, particularly with the laity. And as a lay person working with the women religious for Renate, and also in relation to APT Ireland, Religious in Ireland, working against human trafficking, there is the sense of welcome and the sense of selflessness that needs to be emphasized in relation to the women religious, not only in the context of their ministry, but in the context in which they welcome people, laity in particular, welcome engagement with the laity and make space for us to be able to contribute in a supportive way to the work of the religious. And that is a huge gift that the women religious share with us. It's often unacknowledged, but as a lay person, I want to acknowledge that here. I want to call on a word that Imelda often uses, co-responsibility. And I congratulate and salute the religious for the courage and the generosity of spirit to be co-responsible with us, even though they are the leaders really, but to invite us in engagement with their mission. So thank you for that, and want to acknowledge that.
Thank you very much, Anne. I don't think we've got anybody else who wants to say anything, but if there is anyone, please send us a message or raise your hand. Oh, actually, yes, we do. We have Sister Grace. Can we connect with Sister Grace?
Hello, everyone. Your Excellencies, thanks for making this opportunity possible to hear the voices of sisters. Sister Grace, Africa. We are a regional body for sisters in Africa. I would like to thank the presenters who explained the situation of the sisters in the region, in their different countries and areas. Here in Africa, I think we are reaching a situation where sisters are not going to be able to feed themselves. We have the lockdown protocols that the governments in the region have put in place to try to contain the virus, because we lack the health facilities, we lack the equipment maybe to be able to manage the situation. So governments are in hurry to put in place protocols that will help the countries to contain the virus. But the challenge now is schools where the sisters are ministering and other social services have been closed down. So we are actually going to a situation where sisters probably will not be able to sustain themselves, like to feed their members, to be able to do other activities. So it's a real situation, like a previous speaker mentioned. The sisters, probably not many people will pay attention maybe to think about the welfare of the sisters. So it becomes a challenge that other people, vulnerable communities that the sisters serve, are coming to knock at the doors of the sisters to ask for help. And many of the sisters in the region, as individual congregations, have been able to reach out to these communities because they see them as people they have been serving, but they are their wits' end, because many of them are feeding and sustaining their families from hand to mouth. So really, it's a very challenging situation for the sisters in Africa, because you don't have other people like to come to their rescue as they try to also minister to the vulnerable people in our countries and in our areas. So it's really, that is what I just wanted to mention as an issue of concern for sisters here in our region. Thank you.
For telling us about that very difficult reality. I think we now have Dr. Di Giovanni back. So if Dr. Di Giovanni would like to finish what she was saying, and then I think we might wrap up after that as we're getting to the end of our time.
Thank you, Ambassador Axworthy. I'm sorry for this report. I just want to seize the opportunity to express my appreciation to the sister who spoke before, and their communities are entirely dedicated to those who are the most in need. Your work and courage are truly impressive, and we give thanks for your witness to God's love towards the most defenseless and towards those who find themselves trapped in dramatic situation of violence, trafficking, or exclusion. And you reach many people, most often those most in need, by means of your charisma, which express also your great faith and generosity, as even your maternal disposition and inspire your work. Please extend our gratefulness for you and your work to all the sisters of your communities who are sowing hope in the desert of our world. Thank you.
So I think we will draw to a close now. There's some very nice comments in the chat. Please do read them if you're on Zoom. About the work of the sisters. I think someone asked about support. So from our point of view, obviously, there are many ways that we can all support the sisters through making donations, but also through working with the sisters and recognizing their work, which is what we're trying to do this morning. I think the work of the sisters, it seems to us, is often a little bit unseen, and it's important that we acknowledge the selfless work. People have mentioned selflessness, the selfless work that the sisters do throughout the world to help those who are most in need, and we really want to say thank you to you for that. So now I'm going to hand over to Sister Yolanda Kafka, who's President of the International Union of Superiors General, for closing remarks, and then I will hand back to Calista.
For me to conclude this symposium, and I feel very grateful as President of UISG, partnering to be with the Ambassador Calixa and Sally in the concern for the common good of humanity, and especially as today we have been touching the two pillars on which every society must stand, which is the human right of dignity and the health. We feel very grateful, I think, in the name of the staff also and of the members of the boards for being here capable to host this event, and thank you for counting on us. Really, as religious, we have heard some examples, very touching witnesses and experiences that they always bring us to the concrete reality, to the concrete persons. And I'm very grateful for the witnesses that were brought here, and we are aware of these 650,000 sisters that are present in the at the root grass of the situations, and everywhere with the sisterly care. I think it was the Dr. Advocato Di Francesca saying about the motherly care and sisterly care that we give. So yes, the consecration means this: give out totally our life for the service of God and to praise Him by serving to humanity. And we do it in the name of Jesus and His gospel wherever we are. So thank you, Therese, for bringing us the awareness of the dignity of every child, despite of the condition he is born. Thank you to Sister Imelda for bringing us to the very shameful reality of trade of humans that moves a lot of systems, not only money, but also the systems of trade. And thank you for Sister Alicia to bringing us the witness of service to the sister, to the elderly sister that are our treasures, as they are witnessing of the history of their religious life. And also thank you for sharing us this creativity of the neighborhood by bringing the service of sustain, of mutual support. Thank you also for the voice of the collaboration of laity, because we share our mission, but we share also in our spirituality and the life for Christ. So I would like to make last words with the prayer that is made of the words that in these last weeks Pope Francis were enlightening us and sustaining us. Lord, may our hearts be open to let us be profoundly shaken by what is happening in all around us. Help us, Lord, each one of us to recognize ourselves as part of the single family, as humanity, and give us your grace to support one another. Help us make it possible every day, in every gesture, working to eliminate inequalities, to heal the consequences and also its roots, and be determined to care for the entire human family. So this growing sense of communion we are experiencing, and collaboration and interconnections that we are feeling, I think it is another hope for humanity. So to preserve the child is a future, and to collaborate is also a way for future. So thank you to make it possible again, our friends, Ambassador Gingrich and Axworthy. So thank you for sharing the opportunity to share with. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Yolanda. Between you and Sister Pat, the UISG is a very. Thank you to our panelists and to Ambassador Axworthy for an inspiring discussion on how this pandemic has impacted the lives of women religious and the communities they serve. And finally, thanks to all of you for joining us today and for helping us shine a bright light on women religious and their extraordinary achievements. Have a great day and God bless.